Have you ever wondered how a simple string of beads could transform your life? What if the secret to peace in your home was something that has been available to us for centuries? This is what Pope John Paul II revealed about keeping a rosary at home and the profound effects it can have on our lives. Today, we'll explore the remarkable guidance of Pope John Paul II about having a rosary in your home and how this simple devotion can bring unexpected blessings to your life. Pope John Paul II wasn't just a spiritual leader. He understood the deep connection between our faith practices and every aspect of our well-being. Let me tell you about Maria, a woman in her 60s who had always considered herself faithful but was going through a difficult period. Her retirement savings weren't stretching as far as she had hoped, and worries about the future kept her awake at night. The stress was affecting her health, her blood pressure was rising, and she felt constantly anxious. One day, while cleaning out her mother's belongings after she had passed away, Maria found an old rosary. It had been years since she had prayed the rosary regularly. That night, feeling particularly alone and worried, she held the beads in her hands and began to pray. Something shifted in her that evening, not dramatically, but subtly. She slept better than she had in months. Maria decided to place the rosary on her bedside table and committed to praying it each evening. What could it hurt, she thought. Within weeks, friends began commenting on how she seemed more at peace. The interesting thing was that her financial situation hadn't changed, but her perspective had. She found herself making wiser decisions, feeling less compelled to spend on things she didn't need, and experiencing gratitude for what she had. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's topic. If you're enjoying this reflection, please consider subscribing to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our future videos. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you have a rosary in your home, I'd love to hear your stories. Pope John Paul II once said, "The rosary is my favorite prayer, a marvelous prayer, marvelous in its simplicity and its depth." He understood that this prayer connects us to something greater than ourselves. When we pray the rosary, we're not just reciting words, we're entering into a meditation on the life of Christ through Mary's eyes. But what does this have to do with your home? John Paul II emphasized that the family that prays together stays together. The presence of a rosary in your home serves as a physical reminder of your spiritual foundation. It becomes an anchor in troubled times, a symbol of hope when challenges arise. The science of stress reduction supports what John Paul II taught about prayer. When we engage in contemplative prayer like the rosary, our bodies experience what scientists call the relaxation response. Our heart rates slow, our breathing deepens, and stress hormones like cortisol decrease. This isn't just spiritual wisdom, it's practical health advice. Many people don't realize that John Paul II also spoke about responsible stewardship in all areas of life. He taught that our material possessions should serve our higher purpose, not become our masters. A rosary, perhaps the most humble and inexpensive of religious items, reminds us that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. Researchers have found that people who practice mindfulness and prayer tend to make more thoughtful financial decisions. They're less likely to engage in impulsive spending and more likely to find contentment with what they have. The rosary, with its rhythmic repetition and focus on the mysteries of faith, is a perfect tool for developing this mindfulness. Maria discovered this firsthand. As her nightly rosary became a habit, she found herself naturally implementing changes in her daily life. She began preparing more meals at home instead of eating out, not as a burdensome budget measure, but as a form of self-care. She started walking in the mornings, using that time to reflect on the joyful mysteries. Her doctor was surprised by the improvement in her blood pressure at her next checkup. The rosary in her home became more than a devotional object. It became a touchstone for a more integrated life. When financial worries arose, holding the beads helped her maintain perspective. The physical presence of the rosary in her home served as a reminder that she was never truly alone with her problems. John Paul II's teaching on the rosary went beyond simply encouraging its recitation. He saw it as a tool for transformation, personal, familial, and societal. In his apostolic letter, Rosarium Virginis Mariae, he wrote about the rosary as a prayer for peace in the family and in the world. Having a rosary in your home isn't just about personal devotion. It's about creating a space where peace can flourish. This peace has tangible effects. When we're at peace, we make better decisions about our health. We're more likely to prepare nutritious meals, maintain healthy sleep patterns, and engage in regular physical activity. We're also more likely to manage our resources wisely, avoiding the financial pitfalls that come with stress-based decision-making. Maria's story continues to unfold. Her friends, noticing the change in her, asked what was different. She simply showed them the rosary on her bedside table. Several asked if she would teach them to pray it. They wanted what she had found. A small prayer group formed, meeting weekly in different homes. These gatherings became times of sharing not just prayer, but practical wisdom about life's challenges. One friend was struggling with medical bills. The group didn't just pray, they helped her navigate the healthcare system to find assistance programs. Another was feeling isolated after retirement. The connections formed through prayer became a lifeline of community support. The rosary had become not just an individual devotion, but a foundation for communal resilience. This is what Pope John Paul II foresaw when he spoke about the rosary in family life. He understood that spiritual practices don't exist in isolation from the rest of our lives. They inform how we care for our bodies, how we manage our resources, how we build community. The rosary in the home becomes a focal point for integrating all aspects of a well-lived life. Modern research on habits suggests that having physical reminders of our intentions helps us maintain positive practices. A rosary visibly displayed in your home, perhaps on a bedside table, hanging near a doorway, or placed in a special prayer corner, becomes such a reminder. It gently calls you back to center when life's demands pull you in too many directions. The physical act of holding the beads as you pray engages your senses in a way that purely mental prayer might not. This tactile dimension can help anchor your thoughts when worries about health or finances might otherwise cause your mind to race. The beads pass through your fingers one by one, just as moments pass in life. A reminder that no challenge lasts forever. John Paul II experienced this truth personally through his own health struggles. Despite facing serious physical limitations, especially in his later years, he continued to find strength through prayer. He demonstrated that spiritual well-being can flourish even when physical health declines. His witness reminds us that the rosary in our homes connects us to a source of strength beyond our own resources. This connection becomes especially valuable when facing financial uncertainties. Economic downturns, unexpected expenses, and retirement concerns can trigger anxiety that affects both mental and physical health. The presence of a rosary in your home reminds you that your worth isn't determined by your financial status. It points to a different economy, what John Paul II called the economy of salvation, where our true wealth is measured in love. Maria found that as the rosary became central to her home life, her perspective on material possessions began to shift. She had always enjoyed shopping, often bringing home items she didn't really need. Now, before making purchases, she found herself asking whether these things would contribute to the peace she was cultivating in her home. Many items stayed on store shelves as a result. Her credit card bills decreased, not because she was budgeting, stringently, but because her desires had simplified. This aligns perfectly with what John Paul II taught about material goods. He didn't condemn prosperity or comfort, but he encouraged a proper relationship with possessions. In his encyclical Centesimus Annus, he warned against consumerism, that attempts to fill spiritual emptiness with material things. The Rosary in the home helps maintain proper perspective. We use things and love people, not the other way around. Health researchers have documented the damaging effects of lifestyle inflation. As income increases, spending increases to match or exceed it, often with negative consequences for well-being. The presence of a rosary in your home serves as a gentle reminder of what truly matters. It's a silent witness against unnecessary accumulation and the stress that inevitably follows. John Paul II often spoke about the gospel of suffering, finding meaning in life's difficulties through uniting them with Christ's sacrifice. For anyone facing health challenges or financial setbacks, the Rosary becomes a powerful tool for this spiritual practice. Each bead can represent a worry or a pain entrusted to God's care. Consider how this played out in Maria's life. When her arthritis flared up, making sleep difficult, she would hold her rosary and pray specifically about her pain. She didn't always experience immediate physical relief, but she found a peace that helped her cope. Similarly, when an unexpected home repair strained her budget, the rosary helped her maintain perspective. These weren't just spiritual exercises, they had measurable effects on her stress levels and consequently on her overall health. Another woman in Maria's prayer group, Elena, had a different experience. After placing a rosary in her living room, she noticed her teenage grandchildren asking questions about it when they visited. These conversations opened doors to discussions about values, priorities, and finding purpose in life. What began as curiosity about a string of beads led to meaningful intergenerational dialogue about what truly constitutes a rich life. Pope John Paul II understood the evangelizing power of visible faith. He knew that sacred objects in our homes don't just remind us of our beliefs, they invite others into conversation. In a society increasingly focused on digital wealth and virtual connections, the tangible rosary speaks of enduring truths that have sustained countless generations through wars, economic depressions, plagues, and personal tragedies. Interestingly, financial advisors often recommend having visual reminders of long-term goals to avoid short-sighted financial decisions. A rosary in your home serves this purpose perfectly. It reminds you that your life has meaning beyond the immediate, that your choices today shape not just your temporal future, but your eternal one. This perspective naturally leads to more prudent financial decisions. Sleep quality is another area where the rosary's presence can make a difference. Many people struggle with insomnia fueled by financial worries or health concerns. Sleep scientists recommend establishing calming bedtime rituals and removing stimulating influences like electronic devices. Praying the rosary before sleep, as John Paul II himself did throughout his life, creates exactly the kind of peaceful transition that promotes restful sleep. Improved sleep isn't just a quality of life issue, it has profound health implications. During deep sleep, the body repairs itself, the brain consolidates memories, and stress hormones decrease. Better sleep means better immune function, improved cognitive performance, and greater emotional resilience. The rosary beside your bed becomes not just a spiritual tool, but part of your health maintenance system. Maria experienced these benefits firsthand. As her evening rosary habit became established, she found herself naturally turning off the television earlier. The news, with its constant stream of worrying events, was replaced by the rhythm of prayer. She began sleeping more soundly and waking refreshed. Her doctor was pleased with her progress and reduced one of her medications. John Paul II, who experienced serious health challenges throughout his life, demonstrated how spiritual practices support physical well-being, even when healing isn't immediate or complete. He showed that peace and purpose can coexist with physical limitation. The Rosary in your home reminds you of this truth, that wellness encompasses more than just physical health. Financial wellness follows a similar pattern. Having a rosary in your home reminds you that true security comes not from accumulation, but from proper relationship with God, with others, with the material world. John Paul II taught that prosperity itself isn't the problem. It's prosperity without purpose that empties life of meaning. Maria's prayer group expanded their practice beyond just reciting the Rosary. They began exploring John Paul II's writings on human dignity and solidarity. They realized that their financial choices affected not just themselves, but communities around the world. Several members began researching ethical investment options, ensuring their retirement funds weren't supporting practices contrary to their values. This expanded awareness reflects John Paul II's teaching on structures of sin and structures of solidarity in economic systems. He believed that personal conversion should lead to transformed social relationships. The Rosary in your home becomes a reminder not just of personal devotion, but of your connection to the global human family. Elena, inspired by these discussions, looked at her medication expenses with new eyes. She asked her doctor about generic alternatives to her brand name prescriptions and discovered she could save significantly without compromising her treatment. She viewed this not just as personal frugality, but as stewarding resources that could benefit others. The presence of a rosary in your home creates what anthropologists call a threshold, a physical reminder that you're crossing from one way of being into another. Each time you see it, you have the opportunity to shift from anxiety to trust, from scarcity thinking to abundance mindset, from isolation to communion. These psychological shifts have profound implications for how you approach both health and financial decisions. John Paul II understood that faith isn't compartmentalized. It infuses every aspect of life with meaning. He saw the Rosary as a practical tool for this integration. When we pray the joyful mysteries, we remember that everyday life, work, family relationships, material needs, is the context for encountering God. When we meditate on the sorrowful mysteries, we find meaning in suffering, whether physical, emotional, or financial. The glorious mysteries remind us that current limitations aren't the final word. This holistic approach is what Maria's group discovered as they continued meeting. Their conversations naturally flowed between spiritual insights, health challenges, and financial concerns. They weren't forcing connections between these areas. They were recognizing the inherent wholeness of human experience that John Paul II so often emphasized. One member of the group, Francisco, was preparing for retirement and feeling anxious about having enough saved. The group's reflections helped him recognize that his fear was rooted not just in financial calculations, but in questions about purpose and worth. As he prayed the Rosary in his home each evening, he began reimagining his retirement not as an ending, but as a new chapter of contribution. His financial planning became more realistic as his emotional relationship with money healed. Another member, Sophia, had been neglecting preventive healthcare due to concerns about costs. The group gently encouraged her to see that stewardship of resources includes stewardship of the body. The Rosary in her home became a reminder to care for herself as a beloved child of God. She scheduled her overdue checkups, discovering a minor health issue that was easily addressed because it was caught early. These stories illustrate what John Paul II meant when he said that the Rosary helps us see our lives through Mary's eyes. with trust in God's providence, courage in the face of suffering, and joy in everyday blessings. Having a rosary in your home creates space for this perspective to develop and deepen. Research on habit formation shows that visual cues in our environment significantly impact our daily choices. A rosary visible in your home acts as what psychologists call a trigger for contemplative practices. Each time you see it, you're reminded of your commitment to living mindfully. Over time, this awareness extends beyond formal prayer times to influence countless small decisions throughout your day. Maria noticed this happening naturally. The rosary on her bedside table became a touchpoint that grounded her when anxiety threatened to overwhelm. When advertisements tempted her toward unnecessary purchases, the memory of her evening prayers helped her distinguish between wants and needs. When health concerns arose, the perspective gained through prayer helped her address them with calm, determination, rather than panic. Pope John Paul II understood this integrative power of devotion. In his 1995 letter to women, he wrote about the need to harmonize family life, work, and social engagement. The rosary in your home serves as a physical reminder of this harmonization, that all aspects of life can be brought into a unified whole through prayer. This isn't just spiritual theory, it's practical wisdom for managing life's competing demands. Elena found this particularly helpful during a family health crisis. When her husband was hospitalized with pneumonia, the rosary in their home became her anchor amid medical decisions, insurance paperwork, and emotional strain. The habit of turning to prayer helped her maintain the clarity needed to advocate effectively for his care, while also tending to her own well-being during a stressful time. Financial advisors often note that money decisions are more emotional than logical for most people. The regular practice of praying the rosary creates emotional resilience that extends to financial matters. As John Paul II taught, prayer helps us develop detachment, not in the sense of not caring, but in the sense of not being controlled by possessions or circumstances. This detachment leads to wiser financial choices and greater peace regardless of economic conditions. Francisco experienced this truth as he continued preparing for retirement. Having a rosary in his study where he reviewed his finances helped him maintain perspective. He found himself making decisions based not on fear or comparison with others, but on his true needs and values. When market fluctuations occurred, he could view them with equanimity rather than anxiety. John Paul II often connected physical health with spiritual well-being. He spoke of the body as a temple of the Holy Spirit and emphasized that care for physical health is part of our stewardship responsibility. The rosary in your home reminds you that body and soul are united, that spiritual practices support physical health, and physical self-care honors the Creator who formed you. Sophia took this teaching to heart. After her health scare, she placed a rosary in her kitchen as a reminder that nourishing her body was a form of prayer. Her food choices gradually shifted, not through rigid dieting, but through mindful awareness of how different foods affected her energy and well-being. She found herself naturally drawn to more whole foods and reasonable portions. The results weren't just spiritual. At her next checkup, her doctor noted improvements in several health markers. The rosary hadn't directly changed her biochemistry, but it had supported the mindful awareness that led to healthier choices. John Paul II would have recognized this as the embodied nature of spiritual practice, faith lived out in concrete, physical choices. Maria's prayer group continued to evolve. They began to notice needs in their wider community and considered how they might respond. One member suggested organizing a financial literacy workshop at their community center, sharing the wisdom they had gained about responsible stewardship. Another, who had medical training, offered to conduct blood pressure screenings after their meetings. These initiatives reflect John Paul II's teaching that prayer should lead to action. He frequently emphasized that the contemplation of Christ through Mary in the Rosary should strengthen our commitment to building a more just world. The Rosary in your home reminds you that prayer isn't an escape from worldly concerns, but a foundation for addressing them with wisdom and compassion. A recent addition to Maria's group was a younger woman named Isabella, who was struggling with student loan debt and feeling overwhelmed by financial pressure. The group welcomed her warmly, and Maria gifted her a simple rosary to keep in her apartment. Isabella was skeptical at first, but agreed to try incorporating evening prayer into her routine. Within weeks, Isabella reported feeling more centered. The rosary hadn't magically paid off her loans, but it had helped her develop a more balanced perspective. She found herself making a realistic repayment plan rather than alternating between avoidance and panic. She also began setting aside small amounts for savings, creating a buffer against future emergencies. John Paul II would have recognized this as the practical wisdom that flows from prayer. He knew that spiritual practices don't remove life's challenges, but provide the strength and clarity to face them constructively. The rosary in Isabella's apartment became a symbol of hope, a reminder that current difficulties weren't the end of her story. Health psychologists have documented the effects of hope on physical well-being. People who maintain hope in difficult circumstances show better immune function, faster recovery from illness, and greater capacity to implement positive health behaviors. The rosary in your home nurtures this hope. Not a naive optimism that denies problems, but a grounded confidence that challenges can be faced with divine assistance. This hope extended to every area of Isabella's life. She had been neglecting regular exercise due to financial stress and time constraints. Inspired by the group's holistic approach, she began taking evening walks while listening to recordings of the Rosary. This simple practice addressed both spiritual and physical needs, simultaneously, exactly as John Paul II had taught. Francisco, now settled into retirement, discovered unexpected benefits from having a rosary prominently displayed in his home. When his adult children and grandchildren visited, they often commented on it, opening doors to meaningful conversations about values and legacy. Francisco realized that the financial inheritance he hoped to leave his family was far less important than this spiritual inheritance, the wisdom gained through a lifetime of faith. John Paul II spoke frequently about the intergenerational transmission of faith. He knew that visible symbols like the rosary in your home create natural opportunities for sharing wisdom across generations. In a culture often segregated by age, these connections become particularly precious. The rosary becomes not just a personal devotion, but a bridge between past and future. Maria witnessed this firsthand when her teenage grandson asked about her bedside rosary during a visit. Rather than delivering a lecture, she simply invited him to join her in prayer that evening. To her surprise, he agreed, though he fumbled. Through the prayers, the experience clearly touched him. Before leaving, he asked if he could have a rosary of his own. This moment illustrated what John Paul II meant when he called the family the domestic church. The home becomes a place where faith is lived and shared naturally, not through coercion, but through invitation. The rosary in your home creates space for these invitations to emerge organically in daily life. Sophia found that the rosary in her kitchen influenced not just her own health choices, but her hospitality practices. She began hosting simple, nutritious meals for friends and neighbors, creating community around her table. These gatherings became opportunities for sharing not just food, but the wisdom and peace she had discovered through prayer. Nutritionists have long recognized that eating in community promotes healthier food choices and appropriate portions. The rosary in Sophia's kitchen reminded her that nourishing bodies and souls happens together. John Paul II would have appreciated this integration. His theology always recognized the embodied nature of human experience. Elena and her husband, now recovered from his illness, decided to reorganize their home environment to better reflect their values. They created a small prayer corner where their rosary was displayed alongside family photos and meaningful mementos. This sacred space became the heart of their home, a visual reminder of what truly mattered in their lives. Interior designers increasingly recognize the importance of creating such anchoring spaces in homes. In a world of constant digital distraction, physical focal points help maintain perspective and presence. The rosary in your home serves this purpose perfectly. It's a tangible reminder of eternal truths amid temporal concerns. As Maria's group continued meeting, they decided to expand their focus beyond their own needs. Inspired by John Paul II's teachings on solidarity, they began collecting supplies for a local shelter, volunteering at a community health clinic, and supporting one another through health and financial challenges. The Rosary had become not just an individual devotion, but the foundation for a caring community. This evolution reflects John Paul II's vision for the Rosary as a prayer that transforms both individuals and societies. He knew that personal devotion should naturally overflow into compassionate action. The Rosary in your home reminds you that prayer and service are two sides of the same coin, both expressions of love for God and neighbor. Francisco put this understanding into practice. By revisiting his estate planning, beyond providing for his family's needs, he decided to include charitable bequests that aligned with his values. The Rosary in his home had helped him maintain perspective on material wealth, seeing it as a tool for creating good rather than an end in itself. Financial planners often note that clarifying values is essential for meaningful financial planning. The Rosary in your home helps maintain this clarity, keeping your financial decisions connected to your deepest beliefs about what constitutes a good life. John Paul II would have recognized this as proper stewardship, using resources in ways that honor their ultimate source. Isabella, continuing her journey with the group, experienced an unexpected blessing as her financial anxiety decreased. Through prayer and practical steps, she noticed improvements in her chronic digestive issues. Her doctor confirmed what stress researchers have long documented, that emotional calm has measurable physical benefits. The Rosary in her apartment had become part of her health support system as well as her spiritual practice. John Paul II, who endured significant physical suffering throughout his life, understood this connection between spiritual peace and physical well-being. He demonstrated that even when healing doesn't come in the form we might wish, prayer provides the strength to live with limitations without being defined by them. The Rosary in your home reminds you of this possibility, that peace can coexist with pain. Maria reflected on how far she had come since finding her mother's rosary. What began as a simple evening ritual had expanded into a transformed approach to life. She now viewed her health, her finances, and her relationships through the lens of faith. The rosary in her home had become a symbol of this integration, a physical reminder that all aspects of life can be infused with meaning and purpose. Scientists studying the placebo effect have documented the remarkable power of belief on physical health outcomes. But what John Paul II understood and what Maria experienced goes deeper than placebo. It's about aligning our lives with truths that transcend our individual experiences, truths embodied in the mysteries of the Rosary. Having a rosary in your home keeps these truths visibly present in daily life.